The story of St Ignatius College is a tale of two influences. The first, of course, was St Ignatius of Loyola. Variously a soldier, a mystic, then a priest, he is best known as joint founder and first Superior General of the Society of Jesus, and author of the spiritual exercises in the 16th century. What is less well known is that the second influence was a railway.
Platform 2 got the 12:45 London Overground service to Enfield Town.
It was Cardinal Vaughan in the 19th century who recognised the importance of railways in enabling people to live in the suburbs and the consequent need to provide them with churches and schools. So he asked the Jesuits in North London to take on this mission.
Cardinal Vaughan wants us to have a school for the laity and a church in the northern part of London, Stamford Hill. I have put the matter to my consultors, and they judge that this opportunity of obtaining a college should not be missed. In my judgment, this opportunity should in no way be neglected. So I am seeking your permission to open a college in North London. It will be good to hand over to the bishops some smaller missions in England if there are not enough of our men available for the work proposed, but perhaps this will not be necessary. Yours sincerely, Johannes Clayton, S.J.
Two imposing residences, Burley House and Morecambe Lodge, were purchased by the Society in Stamford Hill. They were hardly ideal, and on their first night in the buildings, the fathers had to beg food, candles and bedding from the nearby Servite convent. Soon after the fathers moved in, the school was opened in 1894. Father Corty was appointed as Prefect of Studies or Headmaster, and Father Nicholson was Rector. On the very first day, 46 boys were in attendance, plus a rather large St Bernard dog called Hero. The very first pupil was Bernard Green, and he is circled in the picture sitting to the immediate right of Father Corty. The numbers of pupils rose slowly, but in 1906 an Education Act introduced by Mr Balfour brought about a significant change, whereby at the cost of a certain loss of autonomy, the school could attract significant financial support, and it did so.
I had cousins and uncles and my father, and so the contact with the college itself goes back not quite to 1894, but to 1900.
Along with thousands of other men, a number of Old Ignatians volunteered to fight in the First World War. Amongst these was Captain Roy Fitzpatrick, who had been a member of the first ever class at the school in 1894. He was sent to France with the British Expeditionary Force, but was killed in the retreat to the Marne in September 1914. Sadly, he was followed by another 56 Old Ignatians during the course of that conflict. By 1906, the numbers of pupils was up to 160, 200 in 1908, 250 in 1911, and by the end of the First World War in 1918, numbers were at 300, which was regarded as the practical limit of the buildings. In 1920, the rector, Father Charles Nicholson, had acquired a piece of land in Park Lane behind the Spurs Stadium. To this was added a further tranche of 12 acres in 1921 by Father Scholes. Father Scholes was later to point out that the college would now be able to play its matches in perfect seclusion and yet be urged on by the cheers of the entire Spurs crowd.
As I said, my older brother was in the school at Stamford Hill, and I can remember he and a couple of others coming to stay the night on, I guess it would have been the night of September the 1st, 1939, and then they were all bundled off to be evacuated to Welwyn Garden City, going down to the air raid shelters from time to time, which were in the basement below the school. That was more fun than having classes.
This is a picture of the sixth form in 1938. 4 of these boys, the ones who have been circled, were killed in the Second World War. In 1944, the half of the school which had evacuated to Welwyn returned to Stamford Hill. Also in 1944, Mr. Rab Butler, Minister of Education in Mr. Churchill's government, passed an education bill through the House of Commons. The new Education Act had far-reaching consequences for St. Ignatius, because it made illegal combining preparatory schools with secondary schools. Sometime later, the preparatory class, now known as the Loyola Preparatory School, was moved to new facilities in Buckhurst Hill, where it continues to thrive.
I went as a pupil at the age of 10 to St. Ignatius College in Stamford Hill. I was only there for 2 years, but those 2 years were memorable.
Literally hundreds of men and women have served on the teaching staff of St. Ignatius College, but 2 deserve special mention. One is Father Brinkworth, who served as headmaster for 25 years up until 1963, and the other is Mr. Harry Bourne, who spent the whole of his professional life at St. Ignatius, finally retiring in 1974. They both appear in this photograph.
3 of us who had connections with the college were ordained here in July 1968, which was, I think, the nearest the school on this site came to having an opening ceremony.
My first term at the school, 1987, was memorable in as much as it involved trying to unify 2 communities of staff from the lower school on another site and the existing upper school. And the 2 schools were joined up in the January, so I was deputy head for the term where the overlap, and I knew nobody.
We're forward thinking in terms of our curriculum. We value the creative arts and developing the human spirit.
The Jesuits, I think probably quite legitimately and quite rightly, they challenged us. Now, it is up to you to maintain the Jesuit character of the school.
What we have here, what we had, certainly, I'm sure we have it here now, what we had here then was, yes, exam results, sport, cadet force, drama, all the things that you would associate with a successful and thriving school.
The curriculum is much more technologically driven, and a lot more of the onus is on the boy to learn from a technology point of view, and the class presentation is updated as well.
I think it's amazing that it has been kept so much, and therefore I'm hopeful for the future.
Our mission is to be men and women for others. We're very conscious of developing a caring masculinity and supporting our boys to become men who are caring and compassionate. We want our students to go out into the world and to make it a better place.